Fox News Alert, you've been watching a critical hearing on Capitol Hill. Top intelligence officials, including FBI Director Christopher Wray, fielding tough questions on a variety of national security topics, including alleged agency bias, those House FISA memos, and Russian meddling in our elections. This is Outnumbered. I'm Sandra Smith, and here today, Harris Faulkner. Republican strategist and Fox News contributor Lisa Booth is here. Former deputy spokesperson for the State Department and Fox News analyst Marie Harf. And joining us on the couch, former press secretary under President George W. Bush, Ari Fleischer, is here, and we're happy to have him. You are outnumbered, sir.
Yes, I am.
Back to the couch for you. Thank you.
Good to be back. Thank you.
All right. Always good to have you. A lot going on this morning. Yes. Let's get started. A tough round of questioning for FBI Director Christopher Wray this morning. Lawmakers demanding answers on whether or not anti-Trump bias exists within the FBI. Here's what he had to say.
My experience, now 6 months in with the FBI, has validated all my prior experiences with the FBI, which is that it is the finest group of professionals and public servants I could hope to work for. And every day, many times a day, I'm confronted with unbelievable examples of integrity and professionalism and grit. There are 37,000 people in the FBI who do unbelievable things all around the world. And although you would never know it from watching the news, we actually have more than 2 investigations. And most of them do a lot to keep Americans safe.
Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is live from Capitol Hill. She's been watching all of this with us. Catherine, a strong defense, Christopher Wray, of his agency there.
Well, it was, Sandra, and good afternoon. Christopher Wray, the FBI director, took questions from 2 senior Senate Democrats on the committee, pressing him on this issue if he would defend the Bureau against what they described as attacks by the president, describing corruption within the executive branch of the FBI, and that the Bureau's reputation was in tatters. Here's another one of those exchanges.
I'm a big believer in the idea that the FBI speaks through its work, through its cases, through the victims it protects. And I encourage our folks not to get too hung up on what I consider to be the noise on TV and in social media.
The FBI director also took a number of questions, again from Democrats, on the Republican staff memo that alleged abuse under the FBI and the Justice Department during the 2016 campaign. Director Wray repeated some of the comments that he put out in a paper statement about a week and a half ago, that he felt that the memo was somewhat misleading because there was an omission of fact. He was not asked to comment directly on the Republican version, the counter memo, if you will. He has done so in a written letter to the committee Democrats in the House, where they outline, along with the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, what they consider to be sensitive national security information that should also be redacted. One of the other big talking points in the hearing today was on Russia, and the bottom line there from the intelligence chiefs is that Russia sees what it did in the 2016 presidential election as successful, and that the Russians are at it again. Let's listen.
We expect Russia to continue using propaganda, social media, false flag personas, sympathetic spokesmen, and other means to influence to try to build on its wide range of operations and exacerbate social and political fissures in the United States.
One of the most emotional moments of the testimony came from the senator from Maine, Angus King, where he talked about the fact that at least publicly and to his knowledge privately, there hadn't been any real sort of punishment with teeth against the Russian for this kind of activity. And he said without any kind of meaningful deterrence, the Russians would continue to re-engage, and other nations would also follow suit in this particular case. Sandra.
Catherine Herridge, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Ari Fleischer is on the couch with us today. Did we get any answers in their testimony today?
Well, I think on the topic of the Porter issue at the White House, you've got further confusion, because of the contradiction of timelines. I don't think the timelines is really what's the essence here. It's did the White House make the right decision or not in believing Roger Porter's denial. That's the core of that issue. I think on the rest of it, when it comes to the memos, when it comes to collusion, of course we got no answers. We're going to have to wait for Mueller, and we're going to have to wait for the IG, the Inspector General of the FBI, Michael Horowitz, when he comes out with his report on the Hillary investigation and whether that was properly conducted.
The hearing was really wide-ranging in the topics that were discussed. What stuck out to you, Lisa Booth?
I would just remind everyone with the FBI director's response to Republicans having concern over bias within the FBI, that it wasn't too long ago when Democrats also shared those concerns. And you had Minority Leader Harry Reid saying that James Comey violated the Hatch Act. So that's something that both parties have expressed concern with. And clearly the FBI had concern. Mueller had concern by demoting some of these individuals, both at the FBI and also having demoted individuals at the DOJ, and also having the Inspector General, the DOJ Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, having concerns enough to look into the handling of the Clinton investigation. And Congress, as a body, is supposed to be conducting oversight. So I don't think that those are fair criticisms. And I think these are things that we should get answers on and get to the bottom of.
You know, Sandra, today is one of those days when I think it's particularly sad when I hearken back to Hillary Clinton saying who her enemies were and picking a political party. What stood out to me today was that we actually have some enemies.
Well, and that's the point of this hearing.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
China, Russia. And there was at one point when the independent senator from Maine, Angus King, brought up the fact that, you know, whatever we do, let's separate out the collusion investigation in Russia and the Trump campaign and Russia actually meddling. We better get it right because, as we've already pointed out, they are postured to do it again in another election. And oh, by the way, as Marco Rubio pointed out, it won't just be Russia, it'll be China potentially too. Those in the specter of hitting us as a nation, cyber warfare style, those are enemies on that platform, and we should be focused on that and less on the politics. I wonder if we can do that.
Well, that's the point of this hearing. It's the worldwide threat briefing, and it actually gives the American people a good sense of what the intelligence community is looking at in the future. Cybersecurity is a huge part of that. It was interesting in the 2018 midterms when they said we expect Russia to continue their efforts. One of the questions they were pressed on that I don't think we got good enough answers to was whether there's a whole of government plan and approach in place to prevent that from happening again. Mark Warner pushed and said, who's actually in charge? And there was a little disagreement about whether it was the FBI, whether it was the intelligence community. I think all Americans should want them to all get together and figure out how to make sure our system is secure.
Let me separate two issues here. One is an attack on one party is an attack on all parties.
Absolutely.
Hacking the DNC, hacking Podesta, those are crimes that should alarm every single American.
Absolutely.
The other issue is social media and their interference in our election and our thinking. Yeah. This is something the Soviet Union / Russia have done for decades. They haven't stopped doing it. They did it repeatedly throughout the Cold War, particularly on issues involving racial relations in the United States, where the Soviets stirred the pot and tried to pit American against American.
That's right.
Here's what I would think about in the social media era, where it's just so easy for any citizen of any country around the world to tweet something. How do you stop it without sacrificing greater liberties? How do you say that you, because you're Russian, cannot put a political message on Twitter, but you, because you're an American, can?
Right.
I mean, what I always have thought about speech, when there's pernicious speech, you need more free speech to drown out the pernicious speech.
More words, not fewer.
And I worry about how do you stop, if that's the goal, the Russians from any social media use.
I mean, where's that discussion?
Well, I think nobody knows the answer to that question. The collusion question, yes. This is where we have got to make sure that nobody hacks, nobody steals. That's the attack on all of our political parties, our whole system. But the social media issue, I've never heard anybody come up with a solution to stop a citizen from another nation from posting a message that influences or talks about an American election, other than drown it out with trillions of other tweets.
Well, and Facebook has been criticized a lot for not taking it seriously enough. I mean, Facebook and
Twitter's
Twitter
been criticized for not taking it down.
But and you heard some of these senators today say, I don't feel like the companies are doing enough.
You know, another big point of this, and to bring it back to the point of the hearing, the worldwide threats hearing that ended up to be so wide-ranging, which we did get a heads up on, there was a lot of talk about the national debt. DNI Director Coates continued to bring up what a threat our surging national debt is to our national security.
Well, you know, of course, because it gives other countries more of a hold on us if they share a part of our debt and we're indebted to them. So, of course, that is a concern. And we've heard, you know, I forget the Joint Chiefs of Staff previously who had mentioned that our national debt is the biggest national concern. Thank you. Yeah, it was Dempsey. So sorry about that. who had mentioned that that is one of her biggest national security concerns. And it really puts sort of these conversations that we've had in recent days into context with Congress just agreeing to, hundreds of billions of dollars in additional debt, raising the debt ceiling without stipulations. And these are concerns, but they often don't get talked about. And both parties really speak outside of both sides of their mouth on the issue.
And the irony of that, too, is that many of those are decorated military people that we're starting to hear from. And look, it was necessary to raise and increase the cap on military spending, particularly after, what we saw as making our military rather anemic after the sequestration. But the sad point is that you couldn't even get to that very important nugget without making everybody in the room happy by just getting drunk on spending. And I don't know how you fix that. You certainly can't fix it in an intel hearing. I did think it was interesting, though, that a lot of the answers, although not cyber, are going to come in that private meeting sometime after 2:30 p.m. Eastern today. I heard that. It was like a chorus of, well, we'll talk about that later. What did you make of that?
I'll make you a prediction. There won't be a lot of answers in that closed session either.
Really?
No, because there are no answers to how do you stop people from using social media to influence something in another country.
Right.
Unless there's a nationality check in order to tweet.
But that was an
Before
answer back for a lot of
issues. To the United States border, you have to only be an American. I mean, I don't know what the solution is, and I don't think Facebook or Twitter can solve that problem.
Particularly when we have an environment where citizens can also engage in such a large scale. I mean, you see political investments from people like Tom Steyer, who's spending $20 million on, an effort to try to impeach President Trump. So we have the way our system is set up is you have a lot of individuals that can easily engage and influence and shape elections.
Well, as you had just mentioned, Ari, a new fallout for the White House as the president's team is now criticizing the media's handling of the Rob Porter domestic violence controversy. There are new questions over what the White House staffers may have known and when exactly they knew it. Plus, a growing showdown over immigration as senators begin debating a GOP proposal that's already facing an uphill battle. Can lawmakers reach a deal as President Trump calls it the last chance to get something done on DACA? The deadline quickly approaching.
I would plead with those people that have been pleading for years and years for justification for DACA kids that we wouldn't have any controversy behind just getting something done with 60 votes.
The Senate jump-starting a battle over immigration reform, with only weeks to go until DACA protections run out for those so-called dreamers who came here illegally as children. Some top Republicans, including Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, are backing a GOP proposal that mirrors President Trump's framework, lawmakers calling it, quote, the best chance of getting a bill passed that can be signed into law. Watch.
The president has put a good faith effort out there, and obviously it addresses the issue of providing legalization for all the DACA young people, at the same time strengthens border security.
But the plan is unlikely to get the 60 votes needed in the Senate, with some Republicans opposing cuts to legal immigration and Democrats stepping up their opposition to limits on chain migration and relocating the visa lottery.
We cannot make the dreamers a blank check for a nativist, far-right fringe agenda. So we are willing to compromise. Absolutely. Border security is a must.
The president tweeted this, quote, negotiations on DACA have begun. Republicans want to make a deal and Democrats say they want to make a deal. Wouldn't it be great if we could finally, after so many years, solve the DACA puzzle? This will be our last chance. There will never be another opportunity. March 5th. Ari, is the president right?
We'll see. I don't think you can say it, but I do think that President Trump uniquely has the ability to get this done where his predecessors could not. Neither the boss that I worked for, George W. Bush, or Barack Obama. Donald Trump can because he will enforce the law. He will deport people, and that puts a tremendous pressure on the Democrats. If you should not be in this country and you should be deported, it makes the Democrats have to compromise.
You know, can I press in with just a quick follow-up before I open it up to the couch? You worked for the former President Bush. How much flavor was there or taste was there to actually go and solve this issue?
Oh, it was huge. It was huge. It was a part of his campaign.
So where did it fall short?
He September 11th derailed it. He ran on family values don't stop at the Rio Grande. You have to understand a mom is coming here to feed their hungry child. And then September 11th happened, and the whole emphasis of the administration shifted to security. We tried to get it back in the second term, and there was no center to be held. But look, Harris, I am the son of an immigrant, and my mother came here legally in 1939. Immigrants enrich this nation. They make us a better country. We are all, as citizens, better off for people wanting to come to America as opposed to any other country. And face it, when people get off their couch at home to come to America, those are the best. They're the best because they're not willing to leave behind, sit in the status quo. They're willing to risk their lives and limb to find something better in life. We want people like that here. We need a legal system, though, so they come here only legally and not illegally.
Lisa?
Well, I think that is an important point that you're making, but I also think it's an important point to differentiate between legal immigration and illegal immigration. And sadly, too often, those two issues get conflated. And the reality is, Charlie Hurd had actually made this point last week, and I went back to do some research because he had mentioned that if you look at polling, the vast majority of Americans actually agree with President Trump and what he's putting forward on immigration. And he was right. There's a Harvard-Harris poll recently indicating that almost 65% of Americans collectively agree with President Trump's plan that he outlined, that for DACA, for a pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients, that would include merit-based immigration, getting rid of diversity lottery, looking at issues, or even with border security. 53% of Americans agreed with some sort of hybrid between a wall and some sort of electronic fence as well. So the vast majority of Americans, this isn't a fringe issue where President Trump is on this issue. So I do think there's a danger for Democrats in putting it forward that way, because simply the facts don't bear that out. And so I think that's problematic for them entering into this debate.
You know what, I sort of also glean from what you're saying, that we're not maybe looking at this from the perspective of Americans having given this much more thought than we give them credit for. They're able to look at this issue and say, look, if this is our chance for the best deal, what's in it?
So the politics of this is going to get really interesting because of the timing of this, right? Here we are in election year, and the next couple months is going to be a pretty intense fight.
It is. And the closer we get to November, the harder these decisions become. They do not get easier. On the timing, though, there's an interesting side note here. The courts have actually put a stay on President Trump's decision on DACA. So this March 5th deadline, many people believe, will slip probably into April and possibly as long as June.
Well, the White House is pushing back on that. Well, I mean, they may make a situation different through an appellate process, but go ahead.
Right. But where things stand now, the courts and their ruling have put a hold on the end to DACA coming on March 5th. And so, you know, March 5th isn't that far away in terms of Congress. Congress is out of session next week, I believe. So there's a lot of work to be done and not a lot of time. We've said a lot. Why don't they work on weekends? Why don't they work at
Marie,
night?
you were so right about that.
You know,
I mean, it's like March 5th, but they're like just a handful of legislative days.
So this may keep getting pushed. But again, it doesn't get any easier the longer they wait to make tough decisions in an election year.
Yeah. I would point out, too, that judge that pushed the stay had said that it might not even be on his docket until June.
Exactly.
So it could be
months.
Further. All right. We'll follow the facts as they pop up. New questions regarding the Russia investigation amid a report that one of Robert Mueller's legal hires is a self-described Democrat and donor who also wrote for a liberal news outlet. Does this raise any red flags? Plus, a potential twist in the Russia investigation, why a newly uncovered email which former National Security Advisor Susan Rice sent on the day of President Trump's inauguration is getting attention from Republican lawmakers. Next.
That email raises a lot of questions, but I can assure you that 5 minutes before you walk out the door of the White House on January 20th of 2017, you write an email about doing something by the book. It's pretty clear you didn't operate by the book.
Two top GOP senators are asking former National Security Rice to explain an email she sent herself on President Trump's inauguration day. That email summarized a meeting earlier that month between President Obama and top intelligence officials, including then FBI Director James Comey. The topic was the ongoing investigation into possible Trump campaign collusion with Russia. Rice writing, quote, "The president stressed that he is not asking about, initiating, or instructing anything from a law enforcement perspective. He reiterated that our law enforcement team needs to proceed as it normally would by the book." Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley and Senator Lindsey Graham sending a letter to Rice saying, quote, "It strikes us as odd that among your activities in the final moments of the final day of the Obama administration, you would feel the need to send yourself such an unusual email. In addition, Despite your claim that President Obama repeatedly told Mr. Comey to proceed by the book, substantial questions have arisen about whether officials at the FBI, as well as the Justice Department and the State Department, actually did proceed by the book. Does this look unusual to you, Ari Fleischer?
Memos to yourself in the file in of themselves are not unusual. It's the way people in government will formally record something. What is unusual here is the perfection of this memo, the saintliness of it, the cleanliness of it, and the fact that 15 days later it came out on the last day of the White House. Why didn't it come out on February 5th if this is what was contemporaneously reported and heard? That's my problem with it. You know, when they say it's by the book, it kind of, this is like in Casablanca. Was there a memo to the police chief saying, I walked into the bar and saw no alcohol in the bar? You know, the same thing. When you say it's so done so well, it makes you scratch your head and go, why do you have to say that? What was wrong?
By the book was said twice in that email to herself,
and
Marie.
Maybe that's actually what President Obama said in that meeting that she was memorializing. That is also a distinct possibility. We have no evidence to the contrary. And a lot of us who were there at the very end were furiously making sure all the records were in place before we left. We were sending memos to ourselves. We were making sure the archives were getting things. This is a fairly standard kind of memo that she would have written. There's really nothing unusual in it. I think that everybody is reading this and seeing in it what they want based on how they feel about Susan Rice, right? I think that those of us who worked with her think this is fairly normal. Those of us, those people out there who don't trust her for other reasons, think there's something else to hide here. It's like a Rorschach test for how people feel about Susan Rice.
I'm just saying, if someone doesn't have a history of lying, it's a lot easier to believe them.
This is my point. You don't trust her.
Because she has a history of lying. Of course I don't. She just most recently lied about unmasking Trump officials' names. She said she did not on national television and then said, oh, wait, I guess maybe I did. And then she also lied about Benghazi. You also have an administration that has a history of weaponizing agencies with the IRS against political opponents, obstructing Congress with Fast and Furious, as well as the Benghazi investigation.
So my question is, where do they get with this then? Okay, so the two senators clearly say that there's important questions to be asked of Susan Rice, clarify what was happening here. The White House, Raj Shah, this morning saying, we have legitimate questions about this.
Well, if there was nothing, then when she answers, we'll all say, oh, you're right, there's nothing.
Exactly.
If there was nothing, and if she refuses to answer, we'll all wonder, well, why she won't answer? And I understand what you're saying in the last days. It's kind of, you're getting out the door and you're trying to finish your last moments of work. And so you send yourself an email. I mean, we were talking on the couch. I don't do that, but a lot of people do. I got enough to read already, not to read my own bad writing. But, I do think it bears asking the question. It's a simple question.
But on the question,
why did you write it and what was it about?
Remember here, too, in context, this is...
But on the question,
why did you write it and what was it about?
Remember here, too, in context, this is the same Obama administration in the very end who also basically declassified classified information by putting into such a widely circulated document alleging collusion with Trump and Russia that it had to get out. They didn't just send it to the normal release list. It was a classified document. They sent it to such a wide list. It was designed to get the word out about further evidence of Trump collusion, Russia. So I do question the motives of this administration on the way out the door.
And also changing the rules in the way that classified information could be shared across agencies as he was leaving the administration as well. As I previously mentioned, unmasking Trump officials' names.
There are good reasons for
lying about it as well.
That protect our national security.
Of course, I think there are some clear concerns, as Ari just laid out.
Do you think it's interesting, though, Marie, to use Ari Fleischer's word, the saintly nature of that letter? I mean,
no, I think she worked with Susan. I think she was very meticulous in documenting things. I truthfully do here. And look, I wish Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham had gone to her with these questions. If it raised questions for them, instead of making a big public partisan thing with this, if they had gone to Susan Rice, I bet she would have answered them.
There might be she did when she was asked if she ever unmasked
I bet she would. I bet you're twisting her words a little bit here, Ari. But which you're good at. But I wish they had gone to her privately instead of making it a big public partisan story.
Why they didn't, though, because
for partisan reasons.
The former administration had a habit of writing some talking points that she had a habit of reading, whether or not she thought they were true or not. We don't know what she thought.
I think
she read them blindly with regard to Benghazi. Oh, you think that she thought?
I think she trusted what the CIA gave her.
Unfortunate.
Harris, I think she trusted. I think she trusted what the CIA and the intelligence community gave her in their earliest assessment of what happened. Yes, and
if she had,
that's what we're talking about. If she had changed the intelligence community's talking points because of her own personal opinion, we would all be furious at her.
By the third Sunday show, because weren't there There were
all
five
on the same
instances,
day.
right?
All on the same day.
But you know you're getting real-time feedback. No, we're not sitting like birds on a wire outside this woman's office, right? She's going places.
She went with the CIA's assessment, so.
Come back in here, Ari Fleischer.
Look, I think where does this go? Frankly, I don't think this is going to go anywhere. I think the big moment we all need to wait for is the IG's report at the FBI. There is somebody who has knowledge, who has access, and who's going to make a report, and that's going to shed a lot of light on a lot of things.
Absolutely.
Moving on to another topic, Special Counsel Robert Mueller facing new questions of bias amid a report that one of his legal hires is a self-described Democrat and a donor who also wrote for the left-leaning Huffington Post. According to the Daily Caller News Foundation, Aaron Zelinsky wrote nearly 50 articles as a contributor for the liberal news outlet from 2009 to 2014. I'm a Democrat, he wrote in one piece. And in a column for the Hartford Courant newspaper, he cheered on former President Obama ahead of his first debate with Mitt Romney, writing, "Stay relaxed up there. You did the debate thing in 2008. This is a piece of cake, no sweat." Zelinsky, who joined the special counsel's team last summer, is among the growing list of Democrats currently working on Mueller's team. More than half of the 15-member legal team, 9 in total, have contributed to Democrats on the federal level. Ari, I'm going to start with you. You know, we are in this place right now as a country of great bias, great political divide as well. You know, we've seen instances that are of concern at the FBI as well as the DOJ. Is this smart? I mean, could Robert Mueller find that don't have such a clear association to the Democrat Party or a political party, period?
I think Bob Mueller, a man who I continue to defend as his integrity. I knew him, I worked with him, and he's a man of impeccable integrity. I think he has a blind eye to these types of things because he thinks he would never do anything that's political, so he doesn't pay attention to the fact there are people who do things that are political. I wish there was just one person who came out on his staff who gave to Republicans. One person on his staff that we found out was a conservative writer. I mean, it just seems like the deck is stacked. Andrew Weissman, his top deputy, attended Hillary's victory party. You only go to a candidate's victory party for 2 reasons. One is you believe in the candidate and wanted them to win, or 2, you want a job. I have a lot of problems with Mueller's staff. Now, I have faith in Mueller that he will sit on the staff and make sure that whatever they come out with is proper. But Mueller has really invited a lot of criticism of himself, justifiably so, for turning a blind eye to staffing.
Has that changed at all? Because you've said on this program many times that you know that Mueller is a man of integrity and that he's going to lead a fair and independent investigation. Have you changed at all?
Not about Mueller, but I have come around on the staffing issue. I think Bob Mueller made mistakes. And ultimately, this is going to be a political issue, unless he indicts the president. Reports like this become political, and they influence elections, and then they influence whether or not there's an impeachment or not, which ultimately is a political decision. Mueller would have a lot more support for his report if he did not have these problems, where it's a Democratic staff predominantly writing the report. He's invited criticism of himself in partisan places because he has too many partisans on his staff.
So, Ari, when you say, you trust Robert Mueller to sit on his staff and to make sure, I'm just wondering, when you have a guy like Peter Strzok who's having an affair with another FBI agent, and he plays a critical role in your investigation into a sitting president, former candidate, in his campaign in Russia. I just wonder, when you say sitting on the staff, that's a whole lot of distraction. And I believe anybody can multitask. I just want to make sure that he has everything he needs, Robert Mueller.
Strzok played a critical role in the investigation of Hillary. It's not clear what role he played.
But he had
other
to
than
fire
he questioned.
He
did, but he did so toward the beginning of his investigation into Trump. He did interview the former national security advisor, and so Strzok was involved in that. But Strzok was mostly the Hillary investigation, which raises issues about Hillary's investigation and its integrity. I'm in a wait-and-see mode on what Mueller comes out with because I know the man. I know him so well that I believe in him. But I wish he didn't make these mistakes in hiring, because he's only invited criticism of himself. And we need to have faith that when somebody at the FBI or a special counsel reports something, we can take it to the bank.
Absolutely. If it came out that the other people who we don't hear about their political contributions, which makes me think they either haven't contributed or maybe they contributed to Republicans. If
It'd be out if they contributed to Republicans.
No, I actually think I think that's why we're hearing about the other. Wait, let me ask my question.
Can't you concede? No, but I want to ask you a question.
Can I get in here, though, please?
Yeah, but I want to ask you a question. Can't you concede, though, even as a card-carrying Democrat, that Republicans and Trump supporters could have concerns when you look at the deck that Mueller has staffed among his team, regardless if you trust him or not? But doesn't the public perspective, or doesn't the public optics of this matter
You do not need to be totally apolitical, to never have donated to a candidate, and to not be affiliated with a party to be objective and do your job well. And if it came out that he had hired Republicans who donated, would it also bother you?
It'd be great if he at least had one.
No, wait. So you just want them to be equal. You don't care if they donated.
No, my point is here, when you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then a writer, it's a problem.
But there's a bunch more people on the Mueller investigation.
If you had 2 and 2, then I'd say no. This is obviously not a fact.
There's a bunch more people working on the Mueller investigation, so maybe we just need to get all of their histories and everyone they've ever donated to make us all feel better. But Robert Mueller's a Republican. He donated to Republicans. So do many people who work at the FBI.
And there's nothing wrong with donating.
So we can't focus on these few people.
You've got to admit, if you were to set up an investigation from start, you would not want to be tainted with you've hired people who are associated too much with one party or the other.
Sure, Ari's correct. We're going to end it there. Just kidding.
Go for it, Lisa.
I'm messing with you. We really do have to wrap. Too, in the fact that Mueller and others have given to the Republican
It was a job. I'm just
people leading.
But I do agree with him. But anyways, all right. FBI Director Christopher Wray raising more questions over former White House Secretary or Staff Secretary Rob Porter and his security clearance before he resigned amid those domestic abuse allegations. Who knew what, when, and whether the White House has more explaining to do? We'll get to the bottom of it.